Hello, welcome. And if this is your first time with me on this podcast, I so welcome you to join me on this journey that I'm on. My passion is to traverse the distance and the journey between oneness and returning to a separate self, and then going back home to where there is only the one. And what does that mean? Well, I hope to give you your own experience in just a few minutes of what that might be for you in your experience. Turns out that the experiences are very similar, but if I tell you what I think oneness means to me, it will be a concept. But if you experience it, it is your direct knowing. There's a really big gap between concepts and knowing. Concepts are useful when we're trying to wake up, when we're in somnambulance, is that how we say sleep with a fancy word? When we're in a trance, when we're in the conditioned self, when we're in hypnosis, that we are separate bodies, that you and I are different, we appear different, we look different, we're very aware of the sensations of our bodies. But the conclusions that we make from these perceptions and these sensations turn out to be incorrect. I have a great love in my history for A Course in Miracles. I also have a great passion for the non-dual traditions, and the language of both are quite different. And so in all of my videotapes and all of my platforms and everywhere that I teach, and hopefully from everywhere that I speak, from every energy that I speak from, I am speaking of and from the connection of truth, which is only one message. The Course in Miracles, in my experience, is quite tricky. It starts with us at the level of the separate self. It starts where we think we are a body, so it talks of other. It says things to us like, if you knew the real you, you would not recoil. But the you that you think you are, people would recoil if they saw the real you. Now, I'm paraphrasing that, and I've mentioned that before. It was exactly the sentence that got me hooked when I was, do the math, let's see, how many years would that be? 1980s. Well, you do the math. I'm 74 now. At that time, shame was not yet a psychological tool for us to realize that we believed our soul, our being, was not good enough. It was different from guilt. Course in Miracles talks about guilt because we didn't have the common usage of the word shame. We had shame on you in the language, but we didn't have that feeling of shame. That was a psychological concept that came later. So at that time in my life, I was actually profoundly dealing with shame because I, of course, believed I was a separate person. You cannot have shame without a belief in being a separate person. They go together, and mathematically, they equal suffering. So if you don't know someone else's shame, but you hear in their beliefs when they speak with you and when you relate to them that they're coming from not good enough or some kind of wound or injury, you know that they believe in a separate self, at least at that moment. And anybody listening to this podcast or radio show probably wouldn't be listening if they 100% remembered who and what we are. So we're all the same. We're all moving back and forth, leaving the portals and entering the portals of unity, love, God, oneness, universal intelligence, or quantum field. I love connecting people right now in this day and age with quantum physics. And if that word scares you, all you need to know is that scientists have not been able to find the separate self. Quantum physics says that we are bundles of energy. I'm a bundle of energy, and you're a bundle of energy, and we relate in clusters. And it's in a simplified version, just like the weather. There are forces in the universe that create weather. If you're coming from the non-dual, if you're coming from quantum physics, it's not a being, a separate being called God or the Father directing traffic with the people that are the sons and the daughters. But the Course speaks to us in the beginning in that language because it is felt and thought, and the wisdom is that that will comfort us, that will lead us back home. And there's a big reason for that. At first, it's not good news to think that we're not a person. And you might say, why not? If we're so all involved with not being good enough, why would it not be good news to be nothing? That nothing, as far as separate people in the quantum world, is that we're everything. There is no power that's not us. And as my friend Lynn Johnson has said recently in a Facebook share, the grass that's underneath that was planted in the dark, the seed, can push up through cement. And if a grass is that powerful, what are we? I love that. Thank you, Lynn Johnson. So getting back to today, there is a message I would like to refer to. And it's the message from workbook lesson 135. It says, what could you not accept if you but knew that everything happens, all events, past, present, and to come, are gently planned by one whose only purpose is your good. My partner, Dove Fishman, loves to quote that paragraph. And I would like to use that sentence and take it apart and translate it into the non-dual. The Course in Miracles is in layers. It speaks to us as separate people, as I've said. And then it speaks to the quantum physics that says, you were never born and you will never die. That's eternity. It's energy. It's space. It's spaciousness without boundaries. So what could this sentence mean? Let's take it apart. Usually that sentence, the word that's emphasized in that sentence is whose only purpose is your good. Well, I would like to emphasize a different word. What could you not accept? Acceptance is everything. And acceptance is beyond good. Good brings up bad. And I know language is complicated because it comes from dualism. It comes from our lived experience. And our lived experience is dualistic, meaning opposites, good and bad. And the Course mysteriously and brilliantly teases us, brings us closer by telling us that it's for our good. Well, truly, if you accept the isness of this millisecond, no matter whether it's an unexpected death, as I had with my daughter, or it's a storm that came in, or it's your partner left you, or it doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. If you truly accept it, what does that mean? It means you're not in a fight. Not being in a fight means there's no tug of war. You've dropped the rope. Surely, if you have an unexpected quote unquote problem or situation, the first reaction might be to recoil or fight or want something else after you've perceived it's not good. So no matter, the thoughts and the feelings are not a problem. Not at all. Because the next millisecond is a new moment. It can be a new moment if we claim it, if we truly understand that we're not coming from the trance of history, the trance of our stories. Our stories keep us in that hypnosis, in that trance. So we're all on a journey of waking up. But acceptance of this moment, what does it mean? It means no fight, in my opinion, in my understanding. It means I drop the tug of war. It means even more. It means I welcome it. My friend Freedom Cartwright asked me if I could love Melissa's passing. At the time, I said, I can accept it, but I can't love it. And that's only because as I sat with that, and thank you, Freedom, as I sat with that over time, there were taboos in the way, there were stories in the way of my fully loving Melissa's passing. If there is an energy, not a father, not a God, not a separate entity, unless we see God as everything, there is no separation that decides things, that happen. It's not a personal world in that way that we believe it to be. So if Melissa was never born and she never died, and I was never born and I never died, then nothing happened. She didn't leave. I'm not here. And I could experience that. It wasn't a concept. It was a letting go of a story. So many openings came into my life. When Melissa passed on, my heart was broken open. While I was suffering, I thought my life was over. Nothing would be the same. I would miss this. I would miss that. The future would hold this and that. Without her, it couldn't be. I'd never have this. I'd never have that. Those were all elements of a dream. When we dream at night and we wake up, we know we were dreaming. It's actually that easy from the non-dual to take that suffering, be tender with myself, because those feelings at that moment were real, just like they would be in a dream. If I was kidnapped and terrified, you wouldn't wake up and yell at yourself for being in unreality. You'd say, that was a bad dream. I'm awake now. And you'd be maybe a little tender with yourself if you were treating yourself as well as you would a kind friend. What does love actually mean? What did Frida mean when she said, could you love this? Because there are horrific things that happen in the world that the love doesn't. We would feel evil, we would feel bad, we would feel unconscionable to say, I love that. I don't even want to mention them because they bring up terror and hardship and suffering. But we need a new translation even for the word love. If love is being wide open to everything, the isness of the moment. And yes, I can love the experience. I'm now a person who can get teary at kindness. I'm now a person who can cry over someone else's suffering. It's not a boo-hoo with story. It's the tears of connection welling up in my eyes. I was reading a novel with some friends in a book group yesterday, and I got so teary when this man who'd been all alone, living his life in separation, even though he was married, even though he had a family, and when he asked another person to care for his son, this was a person who had every reason to hate him. I won't go into the story, but just his ability to ask for help would have been enough to bring me to tears. But to ask for help from someone who deserved to hate his son. That's in the world's terms, not in any kind of spiritual realm. But we live in both worlds, don't we? That brought me to tears because that's my experience. That's your experience. If you're alone or with someone, raise your hand if it's hard for you to ask for help. I've loved this new journey that I'm on. I wouldn't be doing podcasts. I wouldn't be now a oneness coach. I wouldn't be doing a TEDx talk. I wouldn't be writing a book if Melissa had not passed. I was in a happy retirement, doing my spiritual studies with myself and my friends, enjoying my life with what I thought was freedom. But that's not a freedom that even compares with the freedom that I now know with a capital K. So enough about me right now. Let's take a moment to go into your experience and my experience together as we go into meditation. I would like to start a little bit differently than I do sometimes. I usually start with, remember an experience that you've had recently that felt like separation, that felt like some kind of suffering, even if it was small, even if it was big. Pick the biggest one, whether you haven't been suffering and it was an annoyance, pick that and give it a number. Something that felt out of the flow where you forgot for that moment that you are one with the one of us all. Give it a number. Now I want you to go to another place, and I use the word want there. I'm requesting you, if you would like to join me in going to a want. What do you want? In the secrecy of your own mind, let's admit, do you want a better body? A better meaning healthier, a better meaning thinner, a better meaning more muscular or more fit? So do you want a better body? Do you want a better friend? Do you want a better group? Do you want a better partner? Do you want more money? Do you want a better job? I'll give you just a second to think of what you might be. I want to say perseverating, because whatever the answer is, you've thought of it more than once. It's the things we ruminate over. It's the things we keep secret from other spiritual fellows. Fellows meaning women and men. Fellows meaning humans. What is it that you want in the secrecy? And if you're the kind of person that has trained yourself to not want, because you know the concept that wants produce attachments and attachments cause suffering, let that go. Change the language and say, what is your heart's desire? What would you like? The real question is, what do you ruminate over? What comes back and back and back? What subject? Give it a name, please, if you're joining me, and give it a number. Now, if I forget because I get into the trance of oneness at the end, compare those two numbers. The number that was about your annoyance and the number that reflected your desire. And compare your numbers. All right. In the next breath, and you're probably alone watching this, so make sound. Take a conscious inhalation and a conscious exhalation. And notice that there's a space in between. And let's think of the space in between our breaths as the light. The breath seems to connect us to the outer world because we exchange carbon dioxide and oxygen with other living presence. So the connection is always there. And the air is a connection. And this moment, we're going to park our troubles, our belief in a body, and our desires inside our heads. And out through our hearts, we're going to be present with the exchange of breathing with the air. The body's bones and skin do not separate us from the air. The air, you could say, is part of us. We exchange with it. Without it, we stop living. Let's leave our hearts for just a moment, knowing that our life force is exchanged with the air in the room. And there's no boundary where the air from the outside actually has an edge from the air that we use in oxygenating our bodies with life. Once we stop taking in this oxygen, then the me that we thought was us is no longer. But right now, we're going to have a different experience of the me. We're experiencing that we can't find an edge of where the lungs and the hearts and the heart does its work with the skin and the bones that allow the oxygen to permeate and the carbon dioxide to go out and join the room. And let's go further out into the room today. And remember how we used to see a room. We used to see a room with the walls and the objects in the room, like whatever furniture is there, whatever people are there. But now we're going to include the air in the room. We're going to see the air as light. The light enters the room. The air is filled with light. We exchange that light in and out, in and out. And we no longer feel any kind of boundary. Can't quite find it where the light starts and the light stops. And let's push outside the room into the air outside. And let's be held. Let's float into the arms of the air. Imagine that all the air from inside the room under your chair to outside the air has no real edges. The light passes through the windows. The light passes through your body. You're one with the light. And if it's dark outside, you can picture the light, or you can picture how the dark comes in and out through your windows. And if you have a connection, a story about the word dark, just notice that. In our culture, it's just like good and bad. We like the light. We resist the dark when it's our shadow. But if we embrace it all, that's what freedom meant when she said, "Can you love your daughter's passing?" She meant embrace it all in the isness of the weather, the isness of the light outside, the light inside, the oxygen, the carbon dioxide, the weather. If we say we don't like sunny days, or we don't like storms, or we don't like rain, or we don't like the darkness, now we've picked up the tug of war. Weather is just weather. And if we fight anything, we're closing our hearts, we're deciding on suffering, we're moving in the direction of suffering. Now, we're actually not deciding it because there's no decider. If there's no separate person, then there's no decider. And at first that makes many of us sad. But when we're in meditation like this, we can accept things in a different way. We can embrace the no decider because it has the power and the embrace of everything, just like the grass that pushes up through the cement, where the grass, we're not separate from anything. And that blows our small brains. And it's good to know that our small brains, which are used to the relative world, the world of Maya that we make up, it's not bad to believe in that. We've been conditioned to believe in that. But right now, there's a knowing in our breath, in our experience of this millisecond, that we are the noticer, the awareness of this experience. We are aware of being aware. Whatever our experience today, even if it's not of the oneness, we're aware of that. If you're saying, how long is she going to go on and on? Or if you're saying this or saying that, there is something behind that that says you're saying it and is noticing your judgment. And if we go back behind the judgment, even if you say, I like her voice. Oh, I love being in this space. I want to stay. I don't want to leave. Whether it's a favorable or a not so favorable thought, we don't have to make a paragraph out of the thought. We can allow thoughts and feelings to come and go. They only last 90 seconds in the brain unless we add a paragraph to them, and then it seems they're going on longer. And that's how we make them real. But now in the next inhalation, let's claim to be the knower behind the judger, the knower behind our thoughts and feelings. the knower that is one with the one. It's not a knower that's right. It's a knower that knows the one that thinks she is right. It's back, 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 behind where we are now, where everything just is. We're out in the air now with the weather, and we're one with the sky, even if it's dark, even if the clouds are covering the sky. We're one with the planets. We're one with the sun. We're one with the moon. We're one with the galaxies of all. And we can take this with us, this feeling of home that we can always return to, just in the flick of a memory. We're not used to bringing back the memory unless we've had an exquisite experience in meditation. We think of that's meditation and this is my life. At least it's common to feel that or think of it that way. But I offer you today, let's hold this experience now as truth with a capital T. You're having an experience of nothingness where possibly there's no suffering. Remember the last time your car drove somewhere without you being in charge, and you say to yourself, how did I get here? It's from this place. There is a wisdom, a universal intelligence that runs the show, that runs your life. And we can say hallelujah to that. It could be the good news. It could be the answering to the belief in the not good enough, that unworthiness that every separate being carries around, that's wholly untrue. But it's a story like the ones we have at night. The only difference is we build on the stories from daytime. We make yesterday tomorrow. We enhance the story with our judgments. Now it's a newer story. We don't so much do that with our nighttime dreams, at least to the best of our knowledge, unless we're working with a dream. Now it may be happening that we're working on our nighttime dreams in the daytime, but most of us are not aware of it. But we are aware of enhancing our daytime stories to be paragraphs, essays, books, or movies. We could think of ourselves as this being the screen that holds the separate self's movie of her life. That's a metaphor that's often used by teachers of both A Course in Miracles, non-duality, philosophy. But are we using all the portals like this movie screen and the movie of our lives? And are we shoving back the memory of our beautiful meditations where we know something? It's like the meditation is the space between your thoughts. It's what's called the gap in some traditions. I'm talking to you, but my experience is that most people, when they get to this space, can't remember or even hear the words. We enter the space of the all-knowing, where the small mind is not needed. Bravo, bravo. This is truth. This is home. This is deliverance from the suffering. If we join this radical moment, this radical now that I'm calling this millisecond with no story, just isness. And in the beginning, we talked about a new definition of love. I offer that the experience that you and I are having right now is the experience of love with a capital L. But it's not that personal love where I'm loved that has conditions. I'm loved if I do what my partner and I have agreed to in our unwritten contract. I love my child, we think, if they are pleasing. The separate self does not know unconditional. But in this place of neutrality, there are no conditions, no edges. You don't have to be better. You don't have to do more. You are the love that you've always wanted. You are the answer to your prayers. And when we come back into this room, maybe we can make a commitment to allow the thoughts and feelings, but not make them our idols. Just allow them to come and go. They don't need to be changed. They don't need to be fixed if we don't hold on to them. So if you'd be willing to open your eyes in a different way, you can take your time and know that the room is holding you. Soften your eyes and experience being seen by the room, by the energy of the all. You're being held. When we grasp with our eyes and dart as though the world is a fearful place, our eyes then are not soft. To receive with our eyes, they have to be soft. Let's balance the doing and getting in the world with this kind of receiving, as though we're open vessels with no boundaries to receiving all of the isness of life. Thank you for being with me today. Thank you for experiencing causeless joy with me. Thank you for experiencing with me the absence of suffering. Let's claim that experience of meditation, even though we may not remember anything, as our home. Let's experience it and claim it as our home. We did experience it. Let's keep it in our memories so that when we go back to believing in a separate self, in that millisecond, we can remember the peace that passes all understanding. Let's go back to remembering that thing that we wanted, that thing that we desired, and it had a number. What's your number now? 0 to 10. How does it compare? Does it give you a separate, a different, not separate, does it give you a new way of holding that wanting? We can allow the thought or the feeling of the wanting or the desire without grasping, without needing, without demanding, because you are now have a knowing of being fulfilled where nothing was lacking. And think back on that other number, the thing that annoyed you or disturbed your peace. What if you bring this holding place from your new home to that interaction in your mind or your feelings with what wasn't good enough? And maybe it's allowable now. Maybe it doesn't need to be fixed. Maybe it just is. So I leave you with that. And I would love for you to join me again on YouTube or ACIM Gather radio show. And if you go on YouTube, I'd love for you to share any experience that you've had. And maybe there's a place on ACIM Gather to make a note as well. I'd love to hear from you. So follow me on YouTube if you like to be notified when there's another video. Bye-bye for now.